Hey, are you an entrepreneur out there that's really trying to get clear on how to take the next steps in your business? Maybe you've got a great idea, or maybe you've got a great strategy, but you're struggling with what steps to take forward. Do you have a business that maybe you're struggling with creating six figures in it? Maybe your business isn't producing enough income for you to leave your 9 to 5 and be able to do it full time, and that is your dream. Well, you're in luck. I've thought about you because we wanted to provide more value to people that were looking to create their first ever six-figure business. So we released the Six Figure Academy, and the Academy is a 10-week long cohort where you're going to go through every single week specific strategies to help you take your business to the next level. It doesn't matter if you're a starting out entrepreneur and you've got an idea, or you may be a serial entrepreneur but have struggled with really finding lasting success in your business. If you'd like to connect with this academy, feel free to join us. Take a look at our website at www.6figacademy.com. That's right, www.6figacademy.com. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. What is going on, my beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host. And if you are subscribed to this message here, we believe that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Welcome to another episode. Man, I'm excited to jump in and dive into this topic. I'm going to be a little off the top today. I want to just kind of let this conversation soak today because it's something that I have battled with so much in my life, because I believe it's so countercultural and counterintuitive to what a lot of our society wants us to be and it wants us to do. And the topic that I want to talk about today is motivated and really inspired by one of my mentors, Grant Cardone. And that is the topic of being obsessed or being average. We're going to talk about today what it is to be obsessed. And let me first start by saying that I believe that obsession and the word has been used so negatively in our world. And most of the time when people are talking about someone that is obsessed, they're using it in a negative, derogatory way. And obsession has been used to depict what people shouldn't do instead of being a neutral word. I think obsession is truly a neutral word. Obsession is not a good or a bad thing. Obsession is just neutral. I believe the outcomes that comes out of obsession could be good or bad. Those could be different, but I believe obsession is just on its frame a neutral word. Now, as we talk about success, and this is something, like I said, I've personally have battled with for quite some time in my life, because and I don't think I have one. I wouldn't say that I have an obsessive or an addictive personality, because I know some people who do. But what I will say is that when there are things that I'm extremely passionate about, and there are things that I believe moves the needle, and things that are my purpose, and things that I believe are like for me, what I feel called on earth to do, I begin really to obsess over them. And when I consider what obsession really is, obsession really is this thought or this ability to really just meditate on a thing, and it's keeping something so top of mind that it begins to drive all of your decision making. It begins to set the tone and the standard for your life. I'm reading the definition now. I Googled it, and it says the state of being obsessed or with someone or something, an idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes a person's mind. I love that definition. An idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes on a person's mind. It preoccupies and it intrudes on a person's mind. I believe that there's so many people out there, and our world in today wants to down obsession. And when it comes to living a pivoted life and being intentional about creating the kind of life that you want, I believe that this is like going to happen, and it's only going to happen. And people that, when I say the best for your life, meaning that you create greatness in whatever scale greatness is for you. But when I think of the greats, when I think of people that have made notable accomplishments in their lives and that we talk about in our society, the GOATs, the people that have changed the world, that have changed their industry, that have changed sports, that have changed business. These people were all obsessed. Like if I were to deduce what it is to be great and what it is to have a notable amount of accomplishment around something, it's that someone has built up an amazing amount of obsession with accomplishing a thing, or with a sport, or with the talent, or with an art, or with the genre of music. They became obsessed in those things. There is, and I believe it's in the Good to Great book, it talks about putting in your 10,000 hours. And 10,000 hours, right, is what, when you do a lot of research, you determine that that's kind of the entry point to being extremely proficient at something. But for someone to put 10,000 hours into something, that's like not an easy feat. Like 10,000 hours is not like a like a small, like that's not a day, right? Like that's not even a year. 10,000 hours in days is 416 days. 10,000 hours. So 416 days straight. Not saying that this was an 8-hour shift in 416 days. This is 24 hours long. So if we even take that, and I'd love to do some quick math here, but if I take that number, right, and I think of like, what if someone is spending 8 hours a day perfecting their craft, or 8 hours a day trying to get better at something? That's in essence someone spending at least 1,000 days. 1,000 8-hour days in doing something to begin to break into the barrier of becoming extremely proficient. 1,000 days is 3.5 years of doing something every single day for 8 hours. That when we talk about putting in your 10,000 hours, that would then perpetuate an amount of proficiency. I wouldn't even say greatness, but I would say a high level of proficiency at something. If I just started today, and I worked on this podcast, and I only thought about podcasting, thought about creating, thought about getting messaging out there, thought about being better on this podcast, and I did that every day for 8 hours for 3.5 years, I probably would have the largest podcast in the world. There's no doubt about it. I have no doubt that if I was able to spend 3.5 years only focused on one thing and putting in my 10,000 hours, that by the end of that time, that I would look up and I would see that my podcast would be on the billboards amongst the greats. But here's the thing, and this is what I believe we have to all be real with ourselves about, is when it comes to creating what we want, often what we want requires a level of greatness. The things that we want often require a level of obsession that I'm not sure that we're even willing to pay the price of. And this is something that I personally have to battle with myself, because when you think of obsession is all about saying yes to one thing, followed and preceded by a bunch of no's. And when you become obsessed at something, and this is like guys, this is something that I'm experiencing right now in my life, is that I am so obsessed with building out my coaching business, with my podcast, with building out a speaking business, with helping other entrepreneurs create their business and being successful at that, being proficient in IT and what I do around IT sales. I've got many different pillars in my life, and trying in the midst of all that be, a husband and trying to be a father and all of that stuff. You could determine, right, like that in seasons, there are things that have to go to the wayside. There are things that you lose. There are things that you have to say no to by way of simply saying yes to something. And what I know to be true too is that you can't always try to balance everything. Like, life doesn't have perfect balance. And I've tried it. I know balance for many people, when they define balance, is it's being the same thing in everything in your life. And so you want to be a 7 in your job, and you want to be a 7 at home, and you want to be a 7 with your body, and you want to be a 7 with your family. And you just want to be the same in all the spaces that you occupy. But that's not I don't want that life. Like I don't want to be average at everything. I don't want to generalize in being the best version of myself. But for me personally, I think it's super important to prioritize what's really important in your life. And to me, balance is leaning into the thing that I want to do the most and being okay with whatever comes with that. And so some of my struggle right now in where I am in life is just adjusting to what it is to like not be able to connect with people as much as I typically would. Not being able to spend as much time with my family members, not being able to show up at all the events and be at all the games and be at all the sporting events and just hang around and lounge with people. And it's for me like not talking to my mom as much as I'd like to, and it's not being able to hang around with my kids as much as I'd like to, and not being able to see them every night and wake up with them every morning, right? Like it's because I'm sacrificing because I'm obsessed with this. And I believe we understand it in pockets. We understand and we celebrate in our culture and in our world what it is to be obsessed as an athlete. No one looks at LeBron James and say, "Oh man, I wonder how he's balancing all of this." Right? Like we in our minds, we are okay, and we just note that, hey, this guy, most people don't know, right? But like he's away from his family 9 months out of the year. Like how many recitals and how many sporting events and how many days a week does he sit at the dinner table with his wife and his kids? Right? Like how much do you have to sacrifice to be the level of greatness that you want? And in this episode, I really want to really get you thinking on how obsessed are you? Because I want you to be okay with obsession, and that knowing that obsession isn't a bad thing. If you are clear on being authentically you and showing up with the kind of life that you want, know that it's going to require obsession if you want to do it at the highest level possible. And if you don't, that's totally okay. Like I think that is totally okay with you saying, you know what? I don't need to make millions of dollars, and I don't need to have a big house, or I don't need to live the way that society wants me to live. I think the most important piece to this whole conversation around obsession and being obsessed is that you determine what things you should be obsessed with. But what I will say is that everyone is obsessed with something. There are mothers out there and they're obsessed with their children. There are average people out there, right, that are obsessed with being comfortable in life and just being able to create balance and being able to serve everybody. Like everyone has obsession. I just believe that obsession that is spent in creating average outcomes are more appropriate in our society. But obsession, when it comes to outcome, not celebrated in our world. And so I just want to give you the freedom and the space in this episode that you either be obsessed or you be average. And if you want to be average, nobody is downing you for being average. You have your own depiction of what greatness is and what average is for you. Like that's all relative. But if you're listening to this episode and you want more out of your life, like you want to take things to the next level, you want to push yourself to boundaries that you've never seen before, but they're deep down inside of you. If that message, if this message is resonating with you, you have to be obsessed about it. And you have to be okay knowing that there's going to be balls that you drop. There's going to be meetings that you miss. There's going to be events that you can't show up for. There's going to be vacations with your friends that you won't be allowed to go to. There's going to be ways that you're going to have to cut things out of your life to be obsessed at that thing. And ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to make small sacrifices now and live like no one else now so we can live like no one else later. And we have to be obsessed. Like if you don't get nothing from this episode is I want you to begin to think, what has my obsession created in my life? Because you are obsessed at something. There is something that you are obsessed at. There is something that occupies your thoughts. According to the definition that I read earlier, there's a continual occupation, and it intrudes a person's mind. It's continual preoccupy. It's a thought that continually preoccupies and intrudes on a person's mind. You are obsessed at something. There's something that continually intrudes, and it's obsessed, and it takes up so much space in your mind. Maybe you're obsessed with failure, and you're obsessed with thinking about yourself and not thinking about yourself in the highest way. Maybe you're obsessed with being average. Maybe you're obsessed with not getting out of your comfort zone and not getting past the fears. Maybe you're obsessed with not taking risk and not betting on yourself. Maybe you're obsessed of the fear of the opinions of others. You have obsessions. Trust and believe. There are things that are occupying your mind that you are obsessed over. But what if you trained your mind to be obsessed on the right things, to be obsessed on the things that could significantly change your life, that can push you in the direction that you really want to go? And so how about we be obsessed? Because if we don't be obsessed on the right things, we're going to be average. Be obsessed or be average, family. And that's all I got for you in this episode. I thank you for checking out this episode. We ask you that you continue to give the podcast a rating and review. Please, please, please. If you're listening to this on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, leave us a rating, leave us a review. It gets the message out there. And remember, life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Peace.